You know, immigration is great, and we sure need it. But we have to provide human services, such as health, social services, education to the immigrants. And that is, I mean, I'm shocked that the federal government gives $3,800 to the province of Quebec for every immigrant that goes into that province. And Ontario was getting $1,800. Now, why should there be a difference?
I'll give you the explanation. I'll tell you what the feds say. The feds say that it's harder to get a job in Quebec and your economic opportunities aren't as good in Quebec. Therefore, they need to fund more in Quebec. That's the argument.
Okay, well, and okay, it may be the argument, but I'd like to know how many leave on the first plane or train to Toronto.
Does integrating new Canadians into the city cost more than the apparent immediate benefits you get back?
Well, it costs more for the local government.
Yeah.
Because the local government has no relationship in increased revenues to the associated costs. There are some municipalities in the world where net immigration, because of their tax structure, there's a benefit to it. I mean, I think the effort is it's something like 70% of Canada's GDP in the last 50 years has been a direct result of immigration.
I would be concerned about increasing the number of immigrants without a parallel commitment to ensure adequate support for their integration.
In which case, if 250,000 is too many, given the amount of money...
I'm not suggesting it's too many.
No,
it's saying that we don't put our money where our mouth is.
Okay,
that's
so
the problem.
I really want to get a better sense of this. Given what we are spending, not what you'd like us to be spending, but what we are for settlement, et cetera, what's a better number?
Well, I don't have a magic number for you, but I would say that what we should be doing is not skewing the immigration program too far into the economic stream. In other words, the immigration program as a whole should be balanced. It should be a mix of economic immigrants, family class immigrants, refugees and other humanitarian class immigrants. That's very important. We need to think beyond just economic units and immigration.
But we hear the sort of proverbial story of the PhD driving a taxi. I mean, is that really the situation?
It's part of our urban mythology in Toronto. Get into a taxi cab and talk to the driver. I would suggest to you that at least 5 times out of 10, you're going to hit an engineer, or lawyer, or a doctor.
Yes, it's appalling that some people who are foreign-trained doctors, for example, at a first-rate university in India, for example, come here and can't set up shop. That's awful. But I've heard the other side of things, which is there are a lot of foreign-trained doctors who ought not to be practicing medicine here because their credentials just don't stack up. No, were you able to come to a determination as to what was legit and what wasn't?
No, but I think it's always very important to see both sides of that. And we do have certain standards. I think what's incumbent upon the regulatory bodies, and there is new legislation in Ontario, the Fair Access to Regulated Professions Act, which requires them to look at foreign-trained physicians, engineers, hairdressers, whatever it is, that they're regulating. And what's important is to say, what do people need to learn when they've been trained overseas, not how many hurdles can we put up to keep people out of the professions. So the balance is some way to assess people, what do they know, where are the Canadian standards, and how do we help them then, if they don't meet them, do what they need to do to meet those standards, instead of saying, well, everybody obviously has to go back to law school or has to go back to medical school.
George Aite, is the recent drive in Canada, and in the West for that matter, to hire more skilled immigrants unintentionally hurting the developing world?
Well, there might be cases where this might be so, but if you look at Africa, for example, Africa loses almost close to 4,000 qualified and skilled personnel a year, costing the continent almost nearly $4 billion a year. But then again, on Africa, it's the issue can go either way. There's, you look at a country like Zimbabwe, where nearly 40% of the medical doctors have left the country. So in a way, people are leaving, not necessarily because countries like rich countries like Canada are attracting them, but they're leaving because of appalling conditions at home.
At the end of the day, the decision to emigrate is a personal one, and one I think that it should involve personal autonomy. And the notion that we should somehow prohibit a whole class of individuals from particular countries from moving, to me, is a violation of fundamental rights of mobility. I don't want to see that. I want us, on the other hand, to think about the ethical responsibility involved when we recruit those professionals. What do we have to do to compensate? What do we have to do to address the serious vacuum we're leaving?